The walls were shaking. Commander Una Park pressed her back against the cold metal and listened to the sounds of her world falling apart. Somewhere above her, the ceiling cracked. Dust fell like snow. The lights flickered once, twice, and then died completely. "Emergency power," she ordered. Her voice was calm. It had to be calm. 300 people had looked to her for leadership when this started. Now only 42 remained, and they needed her calm more than ever. The red emergency lights came on, painting everything in the color of blood. Una thought it was fitting. There had been so much blood today. The Vera 7 outpost had stood for 60 years. It was a symbol of the Galactic Coalition's reach, a place where 12 different species worked together in peace. Scientists studied the unique minerals of this world. Diplomats held meetings. Families raised children. It was supposed to be safe. Nobody expected the Devourers. Lieutenant Tae Kim ran up to her, his uniform torn and his face covered in dirt. He was young, only 26, but today he looked much older. War did that to people. "Commander, the eastern wall is gone," he reported. "They're pouring through. We've set up barriers on level 3, but..." He stopped. He didn't need to finish. They both knew what was coming. Una closed her eyes for just one moment. She remembered the first attack, only 18 hours ago. The sky had turned dark with Devourer ships. They came in waves, millions of them, a swarm of creatures that existed only to consume. They had no mercy. They had no fear. They had eaten 17 star systems before reaching Vera 7. "How many soldiers do we have left?" she asked. 12. And 30 civilians, including children. 12 soldiers against millions of monsters. Una almost laughed. Almost. "Get to the communication center," she told Tae. "Send a message to Coalition Command. Tell them everything. Request reinforcements." Tae's face showed his doubt. "Commander, even if they send help, it will take days to arrive. We have hours. Maybe less. Send the message anyway. Let the Coalition know what happened here. Let them know we fought." Tae nodded and ran toward the communication center. Una watched him go, then picked up her weapon and headed toward the eastern wall. If she was going to die today, she would die fighting. The Devourers were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. They were not born, they were made. Each one was created by a queen, a massive creature that lived deep underground and controlled millions of drones through a mental connection. The drones had no thoughts of their own. They were simply extensions of the queen's hunger. They stood on 4 legs, their bodies covered in hard black shells that could stop most weapons. Their front limbs ended in blades that could cut through metal. Their mouths were filled with teeth, designed to tear flesh from bone. But the worst part was their eyes, hundreds of small, glowing red eyes that covered their heads, watching everything at once. Una reached the barrier on level 3. The remaining soldiers had built walls from broken furniture, metal sheets, anything they could find. Through the gaps, she could see the darkness moving. The Devourers were coming. "Hold your fire until they're close," she ordered. "Make every shot count." A young soldier, barely old enough to hold a weapon, looked at her with terror in his eyes. "Commander, are we going to die?" Una put her hand on his shoulder. "We are going to fight. That's all that matters." The first Devourer came through the broken wall. Una fired. The creature screamed a terrible sound that hurt her ears and fell. But behind it came another, and another, and hundreds more. In the communication center, Tae worked frantically. His fingers flew over the controls, trying to establish a connection with Coalition Command. The quantum relay was damaged, but he managed to find one working channel. "Vera 7 to Coalition Command," he spoke into the microphone. His hands were shaking. "We are overrun. Repeat, we are overrun." requesting immediate reinforcements. Any species, any force. We have 12 hours before total collapse. Please, please help us. He sent a message and prayed someone would hear. Thousands of light years away, in the great crystal halls of Coalition Command, Admiral Drexus received the transmission. Drexus was a member of the crystalline species beings made of living stone that could live for thousands of years. He had seen many wars in his long life. He had watched civilizations rise and fall. But even he felt fear when he heard the desperation in Tay's voice. "Show me our available fleets," he commanded. The holographic display lit up, showing the position of every coalition ship in the galaxy. Drexus studied the information, and his crystalline heart sank. Every fleet was engaged. Every ship was fighting somewhere else. The Devourers had attacked at the perfect time. "There is no one to send," his aide said quietly. Drexus stood in silence for a long moment. Then he made a decision that no coalition leader had made in 400 years. "Open a channel to Earth," he said. His aide's eyes widened. "Admiral, the humans?" "Open the channel." The humans were different from other coalition species. They had joined the coalition only 50 years ago, after a war that nobody liked to talk about. They kept to themselves mostly, staying in their own corner of the galaxy. The other species treated them with respect, but also with fear. There were stories about what humans could do, what they had become. The channel opened. A human appeared on the screen, a woman with short dark hair and cold eyes. "Coalition Command," she said. "This is unexpected." "We have a situation," Drexus explained. "The Devourers have attacked Vera 7. We have no forces available for rescue. We are requesting human assistance." The woman was silent for a moment. Then she smiled, and Drexus felt something he had not felt in centuries. "True fear. We will send the Reapers," she said. Drexus's crystalline form flickered. "The Reapers? Our best. They will arrive within 6 hours. Tell your people to stay alive until then." The channel closed. Drexus stood alone in the great hall, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. He had asked for help, and help was coming. But as he thought about the stories he had heard, he wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. The humans were coming, and the galaxy would remember what happened next for 1,000 years. On Vera 7, Una continued to fight. She did not know that help was coming. She did not know that somewhere in the darkness of space, ships were already moving toward her. She only knew that she would not give up. "Hold the line," she shouted. "Hold the line." The Devourers kept coming, and the night grew darker. 200 years ago, humans believed they were alone in the universe. They looked up at the stars and wondered if anyone was out there. They sent messages into space, hoping for an answer. They dreamed of meeting other civilizations, of sharing knowledge and culture, of becoming part of something bigger than themselves. They got their answer. But it was not what they hoped for. The Harvester Collective arrived on a Tuesday. They came without warning, without communication, without mercy. Their ships appeared above 3 human colonies on the edge of known space. Within 6 hours, every human in those colonies was dead or in chains. The Harvesters did not see humans as equals. They saw them as resources, meat, labor, things to be used and thrown away. Earth learned about the attack 3 weeks later. By then, the Harvesters had taken 4 more colonies. 2 million humans were gone dead, enslaved, or worse. And the Harvesters were still coming. What followed was called the Burning Decade. It was a time of blood and fire, of impossible choices and unthinkable sacrifices. Humans learned very quickly that the universe was not a friendly place. It was dark and cold and filled with creatures that wanted to hurt them. So humans changed. They rewrote their own DNA. making themselves stronger, faster, harder to kill. They built weapons that could destroy planets. They studied every species that attacked them and learned their weaknesses. They became what they needed to become. They became predators. Captain Jisuhan sat in her quarters aboard the stealth carrier Silent Fury, reading the mission briefing on her screen. She was 43 years old, with short black hair and eyes that had seen too much death. A long scar ran down the left side of her face, a gift from a harvester blade. Many years ago, she had died twice in her career. The first time was during the fall of Proxy Station. The second was during the Kreth offensive. Both times, her neural backup had been activated, and she had woken up in a new body, ready to fight again. Death was no longer the end for Reapers. It was just an interruption. The door opened, and Sergeant Major Do-Hyun Lee walked in. He was a big man, tall and broad, with arms as thick as tree trunks. His face was covered in old scars, and his left eye was mechanical, a replacement after he lost the original one in combat. "The team is ready," he reported. 200 Reapers, fully equipped. Jisoo nodded. "The Coalition sent us the details. A place called Varus 7, under attack by Devourers." Do-Hyun's expression did not change, but something dark flickered in his eyes. "Devourers. I've read about them. They consumed the Yentari homeworld in 3 days. 12 billion dead. They've never faced us." "No, they haven't." Jisoo stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the stars stretched into long lines as the Silent Fury traveled faster than light. They would reach Varus 7 in 5 hours. "Brief the team," she said. "Standard extermination protocol. No survivors on their side." Do-Hyun nodded and left. Jisoo remained at the window, looking at the stars. She thought about the mission, about the Coalition soldiers who were fighting and dying while waiting for help. She thought about what she was going to do to the creatures who threatened them. She almost smiled. In the ship's main hall, 200 Reapers prepared for battle. They moved with perfect coordination, checking weapons, testing armor, running final diagnostics on their enhanced bodies. They did not speak much. They did not need to. Their neural links connected them all, allowing them to share thoughts and feelings without words. Private First Class Minji Cho was the youngest among them. She was only 19, barely old enough to be called an adult. But she had been born for war literally. Her genes had been selected before her birth, designed to create the perfect soldier. She had never known a life outside the military. She sat on a metal bench, cleaning her plasma rifle with careful movements. The weapon was an extension of her body, as familiar as her own hands. She could fire it, take it apart, and put it back together in complete darkness. "Nervous?" A voice asked. Min-ji looked up. Sergeant Jae-moon stood before her, a woman in her 30s with kind eyes that contrasted with the weapons covering her body. "No," Minji answered honestly. "Should I be?" Jie sat down beside her. "First real mission against a major threat. Most people would be scared. Fear is a distraction. We were taught to control it. Control it, yes, but not eliminate it completely." Jie looked at the young soldier with something like concern. "Fear reminds us that we're still human. Sometimes I wonder if we've forgotten that." Minji considered this. "The captain says we became what we needed to become. The universe gave us no choice. The captain is right. But sometimes, late at night, I remember what we used to be. Before the wars. Before the changes." Jie smiled sadly. "We used to dream about finding friends among the stars. Instead, we found monsters. So we became monsters too." The ship's speakers crackled to life. Captain Jisoo's voice filled the hall. "Attention all Reapers. We arrive at Varus 7 in 4 hours. The situation is as follows. Coalition outpost under Devourer assault. Survivors estimated at less than 50. Our mission is simple. Kill every Devourer on that planet. Protect the survivors. Show no mercy, because our enemy will show none to us. She paused for a moment before continuing. The Coalition species think we are monsters. They are afraid of us. Good. Let them be afraid. Let the whole galaxy be afraid. Because as long as they fear us, they will never have to fear anything else. We are humanity's answer to a hostile universe. We are the nightmare that protects the innocent. We are Reapers. The hall was silent. 200 soldiers stood at attention, their eyes focused, their minds connected. Prepare for combat, Jisoo finished. And remember, we don't fight to win. We fight to end. There is no negotiation. There is no surrender. There is only victory or death. And for us, death is optional. The transmission ended. The Reapers returned to their preparations with renewed focus. In a few hours, they would arrive at Vera 7. In a few hours, the Devourers would learn why the galaxy feared humanity. In her quarters, Jisoo looked at a small photograph attached to her wall. It showed a young girl, maybe 7 years old, smiling at the camera. Her daughter, dead for 15 years now, killed during a Kreth raid. Jisoo touched the photograph gently. I'll make them pay, she whispered. I always make them pay. Outside, the stars continued to blur as the silent fury raced toward its destination. And somewhere on Vera 7, Commander Yuna Park continued to fight, not knowing that the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy were coming to save her. 20 hours. Her uniform was torn in a dozen places. Her left arm hung useless at her side, broken in 2 places. Blood ran down her face from a cut on her forehead, but she could not spare a hand to wipe it away. The barrier on level 3 had fallen 6 hours ago. They had retreated to level 5, then level 7, then the command center itself. Now there was nowhere left to run. 20-4 people remained. 12 soldiers, 8 scientists, and 4 children. They had pushed every piece of furniture against the doors. They had set up the last remaining weapons in a line. They had done everything they could. It would not be enough. Yuna could hear the Devourers scratching at the walls. They were everywhere now, above, below, on all sides. The creatures were patient. They knew their prey had no escape. They were enjoying the hunt. Lieutenant Tae Kim sat against the wall, his weapon resting on his lap. His face was pale, and his eyes were empty. He had not spoken in 2 hours. Tae, Yuna said softly. Look at me. He turned his head slowly. I sent the message, he said. But no one is coming. No one can get here in time. Yuna knelt beside him. We don't know that. We have to believe. A terrible sound interrupted her. The ceiling cracked, and pieces of metal fell to the floor. Through the gap, she could see glowing red eyes. Dozens of them. The Devourers had found a way in. Everyone get ready, she shouted. This is it. The soldiers raised their weapons. The scientists pushed the children behind them, trying to protect them with their own bodies. Everyone knew they were about to die, but no one ran. There was nowhere to run. The first Devourer dropped through the ceiling. Then another. And another. Yuna fired. Her shots hit the creature in its chest, but it kept coming. These things were hard to kill. So hard to kill. And then the sky exploded. The sound was like thunder, but 1,000 times louder. The whole building shook. The Devourers stopped moving for just a moment, confused by this new development. Yuna ran to the window and looked up. What she saw made her heart stop. A massive ship had appeared directly above the outpost. It was black, completely black, like a piece of the void itself. No lights, no markings, nothing that would give away its presence. It had simply appeared out of nowhere, as if it had been invisible until that moment. And from this ship, objects were falling. Small, dark capsules, hundreds of them, raining down on the planet like meteors. The first capsule hit the ground outside the command center. It did not open. It exploded. A wave of energy spread outward, and every devourer within 50 meters simply stopped existing. Their bodies broke apart into dust. Yun stared in shock. She had never seen a weapon like that. Nothing in the Coalition arsenal could do that. More capsules hit the ground. More explosions. More devourers dying. And then, from the smoke and fire, figures began to emerge. They moved wrong. That was the first thing Yuna noticed. They were too fast, too smooth, like their bodies did not follow the normal rules. Their armor was black, the same black as their ship, and it seemed to eat the light around them. Their helmets had no faces, just smooth, featureless surfaces that reflected nothing. One of the figures raised its hand, and Yuna heard a voice in her head. Not through her ears, in her head. Coalition survivors. Find cover and remain still. We will handle this. Then the figures began to kill. Yuna had seen soldiers fight before. She had trained with the best warriors of the Coalition, but she had never seen anything like this. The black armored figures moved through the devourers like ghosts through smoke. They did not seem to aim, they just fired, and every shot hit its target. They did not seem to dodge, the devourers' attack simply missed, as if the figures knew exactly where every strike would land before it happened. One devourer charged at a figure from behind. Without turning around, the figure reached back, grabbed the creature by its throat, and tore its head off with one hand. Then it kept walking forward, as if nothing had happened. Another figure was hit directly in the chest by a devourer's blade. The blade went through the armor and out the other side. The figure looked down at the wound, pulled the blade out, and used it to kill the devourer that had stabbed her. What are they? Tay whispered. Yuna could not answer. She had no words. Outside, Captain Jisuhan moved through the battlefield with cold efficiency. Her neural link connected her to every Reaper on the ground. She could see through their eyes, feel what they felt, know what they knew. Together, they were not 200 soldiers, they were a single organism, with 200 bodies. The Devourers had never faced anything like this. For 8,000 years they had been the predators. They had consumed worlds, destroyed civilizations, grown fat on the flesh of weaker species. They did not know how to be prey. Today, they learned. Sergeant Major Doing Lee led a team of 30 Reapers toward the eastern wall. The Devourers there were thick, thousands of them, packed so tightly that they looked like a living wave. Do-Yoon did not slow down. Deploy Fire Pattern 7, he ordered through the neural link. 30 Reapers raised their weapons as one. 30 streams of plasma fire hit the Devourer swarm at exactly the same moment, creating a wall of flame that reached toward the sky. The creatures screamed, a terrible, high-pitched sound that hurt the ears, and tried to retreat. They could not retreat. Other Reapers had already moved behind them, cutting off their escape. Private Minji Cho was among them. She moved through the battle without hesitation, her body acting on instinct and training. A devourer lunged at her, and she stepped aside, letting its blade pass within an inch of her face. Then she put her rifle against its head and fired. She did not feel fear. She did not feel satisfaction. She felt nothing at all. This was what she was made for. This was her purpose. Behind her, Sergeant G.A. Moon was fighting 3 devourers at once. She had lost her rifle somewhere in the battle, so she was using a pair of combat knives, dancing between the creatures with movements too fast to follow. Within seconds, all 3 were dead. Jihei looked up at the sky. The sun was starting to rise, painting the clouds in shades of orange and pink. It was beautiful. Strange, she said through the neural link. It's still beautiful. Even now, Minji did not understand what she meant. Beauty was not relevant to the mission. In the command center, Yuna watched the battle through the window. The Devourers were dying by the hundreds, by the thousands. Their bodies covered the ground like fallen leaves. And the black armored figures kept coming, endless and unstoppable. One of the children, a small girl with silver skin, she was from the Luminari species, tugged at Yuna's hand. "Are they the good guys?" the girl asked. Yuna looked at the figures outside, at their featureless helmets and their inhuman movements, at the way they killed without hesitation or mercy. "Yes," she said finally. "They're the good guys." But deep in her heart, she was not so sure. The queen was massive, a creature the size of a small mountain, with a body made of black flesh and bone. She had no eyes, for she did not need them. She saw through the eyes of her children. She felt through their senses. Every devourer on the planet was connected to her mind. And through them, she experienced everything. Right now, she was experiencing death. Her children were dying, not slowly, not in small numbers, but in waves. One moment she could feel thousands of them, their hunger, their simple devotion. The next moment they were gone, erased, not just killed, but removed from existence so quickly that she could not even feel their pain. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. The queen reached out through the hive mind, trying to understand what was happening on the surface. She saw glimpses through the eyes of her surviving children, dark figures moving through the smoke, weapons that could not miss, armor that could not be broken. She saw her strongest warriors falling like insects before a fire. For the first time in 8,000 years, the queen screamed above ground. The battle was almost over. The Devourers' numbers had dropped from millions to thousands, and those thousands were losing their coordination. Captain Jisoo Han noticed the change immediately. "The hive mind is fragmenting," she announced through the neural link. "The queen is getting scared. Time to end this." She turned to Warrant Officer Hyunwoo Kang, who was standing beside her, covered in Devourer blood. Hyunwoo was the division's tunnel specialist, a man whose body had been designed for enclosed spaces. His bones were flexible. His muscles could stretch and compress. His eyes had been replaced with sensors that could see in every spectrum of light. "Take your team underground," Jisoo ordered. "Find the queen. Kill her." Hyunwoo nodded. He did not need more instructions. "Team 7 with me." 5 Reapers separated from the main group and followed Hyunwoo toward a hole in the ground. The Devourers had dug tunnels everywhere, paths that led deep into the planet, toward the Queen's chamber. The humans would use those same tunnels against them. The 5 Reapers dropped into the darkness without hesitation. The tunnels were terrible. The walls were not made of stone or metal. They were made of flesh. Living Devourer flesh, grown by the Queen over centuries, pulsing with a slow heartbeat. The air was hot and thick, smelling of blood and rot. Any normal soldier would have turned back. Any normal soldier would have gone mad from the horror of it. But these were not normal soldiers. Hyunwoo led the way, his sensor eyes cutting through the darkness. Behind him came 4 other Reapers, Sergeant Jung-ho Park, Corporal Soo-jin Yoon, Private Yoon-ji Lee, and Private Min-ho Kim. They moved in perfect silence, their neural link allowing them to communicate without words. Devourers waited in the tunnels. Not many, most had gone to the surface to fight, but enough to slow them down. Hyunwoo and his team killed them quickly, efficiently, without breaking their stride. Contact with Queen in T-4 minutes. Hyunwoo reported to Captain Jisoo above. The deeper they went, the worse it got. The flesh walls became thicker. The heartbeat became louder. Strange liquids dripped from the ceiling fluids that burned when they touched skin. The Reapers ignored the pain and kept moving. And then, they reached the chamber. The Queen's chamber was enormous, a cave carved from living flesh, hundreds of meters across. In the center sat the queen herself, a mountain of darkness with limbs that stretched in all directions. Around her were thousands of eggs, each one containing a future devourer waiting to be born. The queen felt them enter. She turned her massive head toward them. Though she had no eyes, she could see them through the minds of her remaining children. "Small things," she said. Her voice was not sound, it was pressure, a force that pushed against their minds. "You dare enter my home?" Hyunwoo raised his weapon. "We dare. I have consumed 12,000 worlds. I have ended civilizations older than your species. I am eternal. I am infinite. What are you?" Hyunwoo smiled behind his helmet. "We're humans." The queen attacked. Her massive limbs swung toward them, each one capable of crushing metal. The reapers scattered, moving too fast for something so large to track. They fired at her, not to kill her, but to distract her. While the queen focused on the 4 other reapers, Hyunwoo moved closer. He was carrying something special, a device no larger than his fist, silver and smooth. It was called Protocol Omega. Protocol Omega was illegal. It was banned under 17 different coalition treaties. It created a tiny singularity, a point of gravity so strong that nothing could escape it. Not light, not matter, not even thought. Hyunwoo had used it twice before. Both times, entire species had stopped existing. He found his target, the base of the queen's neck, where her nervous system connected to her spine. If he placed the device there, the singularity would consume her brain before she could react. But the queen was not stupid. She felt him approaching. She understood what he was trying to do. No. She screamed, throwing one of her massive limbs toward him. Sergeant Junho Park jumped in front of the attack. The limb hit him directly, crushing his chest armor and sending him flying across the chamber. He hit the wall with a terrible sound and did not move again. But his sacrifice gave Hyunwoo the time he needed. He reached the queen's neck. He activated Protocol Omega. He placed it against her flesh. The device hummed. Reality bent. A point of pure darkness appeared, a hole in the universe itself. The queen did not have time to scream. Her massive head was pulled into the singularity, compressed into a space smaller than an atom. The darkness spread, consuming her body piece by piece, until nothing remained but empty air. The singularity collapsed. The chamber fell silent above ground. Every devourer on the planet stopped moving at the same moment. Without the queen, they had no thoughts, no orders, no purpose. They were just machines without a controller. The reapers did not hesitate. They killed every remaining devourer, one by one, until the planet was silent. In the chamber below, Hyunwoo knelt beside Sergeant Junho's body. The man was dead, truly dead, his neural backup too damaged to recover. He had given his life so that Hyunwoo could complete the mission. "Rest well, brother," Hyunwoo said quietly. "You did your duty." He picked up the body and began the long walk back to the surface. The reapers never left their dead behind. Never above ground. The sun was fully up now. Commander Yuna Park stepped out of the command center and looked at the battlefield. Mountains of devoured dead covered the ground as far as she could see. The black armored figures were moving among them, making sure none survived. She saw Captain Jisoo Han standing in the middle of it all, her helmet removed, looking up at the sky. The human captain's face was calm, almost peaceful. Yuna walked toward her. Her legs were shaking, but she forced herself to keep moving. "You came," she said. "You actually came." Jisoo turned to look at her. "We always come. When someone calls for help, we answer. The coalition, they're afraid of you. They tell stories about humans, about what you've become. The stories are true." Jisoo looked at the dead devourers around her. "We became what we needed to become. The universe taught us that lesson very well." Yuna thought about the battle she had witnessed. The speed. The brutality. The complete lack of mercy. Are you still human? She asked. Jisoo was silent for a long moment. Then she smiled a sad, tired smile. Some days I'm not sure. But today, we saved lives. Today, we protected the innocent. Today, I think we're still human enough. She put her helmet back on and walked away, leaving Yuna alone among the dead. The Devourers were gone, every last one of them. Their bodies covered the ground like fallen leaves after a storm. The humans had killed millions of them in less than 12 hours. It was the fastest defeat the Devourer species had ever suffered in their 8,000 years of existence. Commander, Yuna Park stood on a small hill overlooking what used to be her outpost. The buildings were destroyed. The walls had fallen. Everything she had worked for over the past 3 years was gone, but she was alive. 23 other people were alive. The 4 children were alive. That was something. That was more than she had hoped for. Behind her, the human soldiers were loading their equipment back into the drop pods. They moved with the same efficiency she had seen during the battle. No wasted movements, no unnecessary words. They were like machines, but not quite. Machines did not carry their dead the way these soldiers did. She had watched them gather the body of the one soldier they had lost. Sergeant Junho Park, they called him. They wrapped him in a black cloth, handled him with gentle care, and placed him in a separate pod. One of them, a young woman with cold eyes, had touched the pod and whispered something too, quiet to hear. They were still human. Somewhere, deep inside, they were still human. Yuna saw Captain Jisoo Han walking toward her. The human captain had removed her helmet, revealing a face that looked tired but not broken. She carried herself like someone who had done this many times before. We're leaving soon, Jisoo said. Our work here is done. Wait. Yuna turned to face her fully. I need to understand something. What? Why? Why did you come? The Coalition and humanity. You keep your distance from each other. You stay in your own space. Why would you risk your soldiers for us? Jisoo was quiet for a moment. She looked at the sky, at the sun rising over the destroyed outpost, at the mountains of devoured dead. 200 years ago, she began, humanity was nothing. We were weak. We were naive. We thought the universe was full of friends waiting to be discovered. And then the harvesters came. Yuna had heard this story before. Everyone in the Coalition knew about the burning decade. They enslaved our people, Jisoo continued. They killed millions of us. They taught us that the universe is not kind. It does not reward the peaceful or the innocent. It only respects the strong. She turned to look at Yuna with eyes that had seen too much. We could have become like them. We could have become conquerors, taking from others what was taken from us. Some humans wanted that. Some humans still want that. But we made a different choice. What choice? We became protectors. Not because we are good, not because we are merciful, but because someone has to be. The galaxy is dark and cold and full of monsters. If the innocent have no one to protect them, they will be consumed. So we protect them. That is our purpose now. Yuna thought about this. But the cost, what you've done to yourselves. The cost is high, Jisoo admitted. We are no longer what we used to be. We have changed our bodies, our minds, our very souls. We have become something that the rest of the galaxy fears. But that fear keeps people safe. That fear makes creatures like the Devourers hesitate. And that hesitation saves lives. She reached out and put a hand on Yuna's shoulder. You called for help, and we answered. That is the deal we made with the Coalition. You provide legitimacy. You remind the galaxy that we are still part of civilization. And we provide nightmares. We become the thing that monsters fear. The drop pods were almost ready. The Reapers were climbing inside. their black armor still stained with devoured blood. Soon they would be gone, back to their own corner of the galaxy, waiting for the next call for help. "Will you stay?" Yuna asked. "Help us rebuild?" Jisoo shook her head. "That is not our purpose. We are made for destruction, not creation. If we stayed, we would only remind you of what happened here. It is better for us to leave. But what if you are needed again? Then call for us. We will come. We always come." Jisoo put her helmet back on. Her face disappeared behind the smooth, featureless surface. "Goodbye, Commander. May you never need to see us again." She turned and walked toward her drop pod. The other Reapers were already inside, waiting for her. She climbed in, and the door closed behind her. One by one, the drop pods rose into the sky. They flew toward the silent Fury, which was still hovering above the planet like a piece of the void. Within minutes, every pod had returned to the ship. And then, without any warning, the ship disappeared. It did not fly away. It simply stopped existing, folding space around itself and vanishing into the darkness between stars. Yuna stood alone on the hill, watching the empty sky. 3 days later, Admiral Drexus received Commander Yuna's full report. He read it in his private quarters, away from the eyes of the Coalition Council. What he read made his crystalline heart feel cold. The report described everything: the battle, the weapons, the soldiers who could not be killed, the device that had destroyed the Devourer Queen. It described humans who moved like shadows, who felt no fear, who showed no mercy to their enemies, but risked their lives to save strangers. It described monsters who had chosen to become protectors. Drexus read the report twice. Then he archived it under the highest classification level, making sure that only a handful of beings in the entire galaxy would ever see it. He added a single note at the end: recommendation: maintain alliance with Earth at all costs. Do not antagonize. Do not provoke. Do not, under any circumstances, give humanity a reason to stop being our allies. He paused, then added one more line: the humans have become what we could not. They have made themselves into weapons so that we do not have to. This is a gift we do not deserve, but must accept. In his personal diary, which no one would ever read, he wrote something different. The cosmos has many terrors. The Devourers were ancient and terrible, but they fell in less than a day. The Harvesters once ruled 100 systems, but they are gone now, destroyed by the same species they once enslaved. Every enemy that threatens the peace of the galaxy faces the same fate, and at the center of it all are the humans. They were the weakest once. Now they are the strongest. Not because they are the largest or the oldest, but because they were willing to pay a price that no other species would pay. They sacrificed their innocence. They sacrificed their peace. They sacrificed the very things that make life worth living. They became the nightmare that protects the innocent. I do not know if I should admire them or pity them. Perhaps both. But I know one thing for certain: as long as humanity exists, the galaxy will never be truly safe from its monsters, because humanity has become the biggest monster of all. And they fight for us. Far away, on a ship traveling through the darkness between stars, Captain Jisoo Han sat in her quarters. She had removed her armor and cleaned the blood from her skin. Now she wore simple clothes, looking almost like a normal person. She stared at the photograph on her wall, her daughter, smiling, forever 7 years old. "I saved them today," she whispered. 24 lives, including 4 children. That has to mean something. That has to matter. The photograph did not answer. It never did. Jisoo closed her eyes and tried to remember what it felt like to be normal, to be weak, to be afraid. She could not remember anymore. Perhaps that was the true price of what they had become. Not the changes to their bodies or their minds, but the loss of something deeper. something that could never be regained. But when the next call for help came, and it would come, it always came, she would answer. She would put on her armor, pick up her weapons, and become the nightmare once more, because that was what humanity had chosen to be. The nightmare that the cosmos feared most, and the only hope the innocent had left.